Statement of a Swallowtail regarding her childhood, sickness, and metamorphosis. Statement given 28th of April, 2025. Statement begins. I've always loved butterflies. I had one of those butterfly kits when I was little, actually. You know, the ones that send you some caterpillars and plants in a mesh cylinder container? All so you can experience the full life cycle of a butterfly. From caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly, all over the course of a few weeks. The very image of change. I watched those caterpillars for hours on end, waiting days upon days for their metamorphosis. And finally, when the butterflies had emerged from their self-made chrysalis, I stared at their new forms as if mesmerized, watching them slowly emerge and then meticulously dry out their delicate wings before they finally would flutter about their small enclosure till I was forced to set them free. My eyes didn't leave them until they had long vanished from sight, wishing I could join them. Any memories of a time before the permeating sickness are more faded now. I can't have always been sick, can I? No, I was the epitome of health once, a sprightly child full of life, hardly ever even getting cold. So when did it all start? I know I was hospitalized at only 11. I know that in middle school I would trade away my lunch despite having skipped breakfast. I was never hungry for food. I remember being surrounded by friends, yet roaming the playground alone, with only the bugs and butterflies beside me. I'm reminded of a warm day in elementary school. I was where I often could be found during recess, at the plant boxes, humming to myself while watching the butterflies. The moths and monarchs that frequented had never interested me quite as much as the beautiful swallowtails. Did you know that several butterflies will opportunistically drink blood, including the swallowtail? They don't bite, of course, merely take advantage of opportunities presented to them. I read that little fact in a book when I was younger. I read some of the strangest books as a child. Apologies, I'm rambling. I'd quickly lost track of time watching the butterflies that sunny recess, enamored by their gentle beauty as they flew, with my focus vested in that one swallowtail most of all. I was transfixed by it. Whereas all the other butterflies came and went with the breeze, this swallowtail stayed. I still don't know what drew it to me, but that swallowtail butterfly found itself perched on my hand. If I hadn't been staring at it so intensely, I might not have even felt it land. Wouldn't have noticed walking up my arm and with its tiny legs, practically lighter than air. That swallowtail remained perched on my arm throughout much of recess, and even long after it ended. No one noticed I hadn't joined them back inside. No one's ever paid much attention to me. Not that I cared. I preferred the company that nature provided over people. The swallowtail eventually left, only moments before someone finally came to find me after what felt like hours later. But that has nothing to do with my sickness, does it? I don't think it does. Unless most butterflies can sense sickness or something. Maybe that swallowtail knew long before anyone else did. There were other signs, weren't there? A childhood game of counting ribs or comparing skin tone to the whitest of paper, of wrapping thin fingers around even thinner wrists to see how far up the arm we could go. Nicknames of pale rose, ghost, vampire, twig, and butterfly. I vividly remember a quiet day I had found myself in the library, though I can't remember now how I was there during class. It was right before I was first hospitalized, so I was beyond pale and skinny. My dark hair had been long and oily, which only aided the vampiric, ghostly look. I was alone at first. Only the books and myself. and the librarian, I suppose, off at her checkout desk. But I had long since checked out my books. I'm not sure what kept me there longer, yet I found myself crouched between the aisles of bookshelves. I both heard and saw the boy enter. He didn't notice me at first. Going about searching the short aisles one by one, I remained crouched behind shelves as if in wait. When he came upon my row, he didn't see me at first, engrossed in examining the books along the shelf. It wasn't until he brushed his fingers against my own, resting on the spine of a book, that he noticed me crouched down right beside him. He quickly jolted back, holding his hand close to his chest as if shocked from how cold my hand was. I've always had bad circulation. He froze as we stared at each other. There was confusion and slight fear in his eyes as he looked at me, taking in everything about my pallid and sickly appearance, how my greasy hair partially fell in front of my eyes as I looked up at him, while making no move to fix it. We just observed each other. After a moment to compose himself, he finally whispered, more to himself than me, "Are you dead?" with a slight shaking waver to his words. "Yes," I responded without missing a beat, with such certainty in my flat expression and quiet voice that I surprised even myself. I could see the blood drain from his face as fear filled his eyes. It was invigorating. I think he saw some of that vigor in my expression because he backed away quickly while continuing to closely watch me. The only time he didn't hold an intense gaze on me was to eye at the hand that had touched me, a look of mixed fear and disgust at what that could mean for him. Slowly, he nervously backed away while still keeping a close eye on me, hardly blinking as if I would vanish once out of sight. I can't recall if I was smiling at this point. The whole time I remained in place, crouched on the dirty carpet floor, staring back at the boy as I gently ran my fingers along the spines of the library books. It was a while before he managed not to stare at me for more than a few seconds at a time, as he desperately tried to return to exploring the library like normal. I don't think he realized how often he compulsively rubbed his hand against his shirt and shorts fabric. Eventually, while checking out books from the unaware librarian, and with no opportunity to dart looks to ensure I was still there, I left. I silently scuttled to the exit, quietly opened and closing the door while his back was turned, and simply returned to class, reveling in the festering of fear I had wrought, infecting and rotting his mind likely to this very day. Maybe it wasn't much of a lie after all. My claim of being dead, that is, might have been closer to the truth than I could have ever known when I first was uttered. They say I almost died when I was 11. Maybe I did die. There, laid in an all-too-big hospital bed as such a young and sickly child, pale skin stretched over a much too small and skeletal frame. They told me I was sick deep inside, that it always had sickness within me. It just needed to be precipitated in order to emerge. Since then, my life has been a non-stop cycle of infections and inspections and injections. I've always hated injections. My body reacting with adrenaline and fainting spells from something as simple as a blood draw. But when you're sick like I am and the only medicine is administered through a needle to the vein, you learn to live with the fear, though it never truly goes away. Fear is a reasonable response to life, I suppose. I can barely remember the last time I've gone longer than a couple of weeks before something different declines in health. I can hardly remember when exactly the first patch of skin had started to redden and peel away before it had nearly infected my entire body. Merely a new disease to need medication for. Merely a new need for more injections. Oh, I hate injections. Like a vampire with vivid hemophobia, I require the very thing I fear to survive. I think you might relate to that sentiment. I think you might just understand exactly what I mean. Something about the Magnus archives had touched me in a way I didn't fully understand when I first listened to it. By now I've gone through it multiple times, save for the blood bag statement, as it would always trigger my phobias and leave me lightheaded and faint. So I've long since seen how this story ends. I know well how little any of us can truly do. It was so well timed to find your first reaction being uploaded not long after finishing my first listen through. Things haven't been the same since then. I haven't been the same. It was right after seeing your first episode, my illness degraded further. Patches of reddened and peeling skin spreading and growing further than ever before across my body like a fungus, mirroring the patch of mold in my ceiling. It was not long after that there was an infestation of ants in my bed. I thought it odd at first, a strange coincidence, a nod to the corruption. Despite my closer association to butterflies, I never once felt afraid to wake covered by the ants, nor did I do much to be rid of them. And still I could find no reason for them to be there. No food, water, or shelter they could be after in my room, much less my bed. More than that, I could smell the ants and the poison that they had ingested from ant traps long before I would see an ant. I could practically taste the sickly sweet toxin on my tongue when one was near. It wasn't until I spoke to my roommate about it that I understood. She had set out the traps for the ants in her room in hopes to be free of them. She told me how she'd been deeply afraid of ants since a small child. She was only 7 when she stepped on an anthill half her height, instantly causing the ants to swarm. How they covered her arms and legs while vigorously biting at every inch of skin they could reach. What's worse is that I already knew this story. I knew because I was there. I was there with her as a child, playing together in the grass, humming and chasing butterflies as she approached the mound. I was there as she curiously approached the tall ant mound, ignorant of what it was. I was there as she joyfully kicked it with a smile, as that joy quickly turned to screaming cries of pain. I was there, and I did nothing. I did nothing as various adults crowded her, nothing as she was quickly stripped and wiped down to reveal angry and puffy red skin from hundreds of bites, nothing as she was rushed to the hospital, nothing as I was left alone, with only the bugs and butterflies beside me. It wasn't that the ants were infesting my room. No. They were passing through to get to her, reigniting that childhood trauma with each ant infecting and infesting her space. I'm somewhat remorseful to admit that it invigorated me to hear that from her. To see the frustration and fear in her eyes. I wanted to sympathize so badly, and yet I felt numb to her plight as I did nothing to comfort her. The song was just so loud and beautiful. The next injection I gave myself felt a little more rejuvenating and a little less appalling. The ants were gone not long after. It didn't last long, though. As it was only a week or so later, I noticed a gravel in my voice and pain in my ear. Medicine alone failed to heal the infection. Oh, how the void sings such a sweet melody in my dreams. There's mold in my ceiling, and bugs in my walls, and disease within my skin, and yet the thing I fear most rushes through my veins with every beat of my quickening heart. Like I said, I've not been the same since I saw your first reaction. I'm attracting all kinds of insects now, though butterflies are still what swarm me the most. A kaleidoscope of an omen to all we pass, leaving fear and disease and rot in our wake. I don't always know where they come and go, but I do know that many of them are bulbous with blood. I do know that the room next to mine is empty now. I do know that despite looking sicker than ever, I've never felt so alive. At least not since that day I might have died. You know, I hadn't thought of it until now, but the first episode of the Magnus archives would have been released about the time when I first got sick, when I nearly died at only 11. Funny how things like that align. I've wanted to warn you, to tell you all that is to come, but that would spoil the story, wouldn't it? We must push forward. There's no turning back. Besides, you had developed much further along than I had predicted by the time I could reach out to you. Don't blame yourself. It's hardly been in much of your control, though I doubt that eases your mind. I don't think it's hopeless yet. I don't think everything is predetermined or set in stone. There's still a chance for you to recognize the remaining options available before one is forced upon you. You're not yet wrapped entirely motionless by the web of all this. A moth can still flap its wings while trapped in a spider's web. A butterfly left with only blood to drink can still take the opportunity it's given, no matter how much either of them fear it. So I'll leave you with this. Things are in motion that can no longer be stopped. I doubt they ever could have, but take solace in knowing that you are not Jonathan Sims. Some may say you're better, worse, an imitation, echo, successor, all sorts of simple comparisons. Few of them fully grasp the difference. You have abilities that don't derive solely from the entities, that don't play by their rules. Sure, they may channel those rules, use them like lenses or guide rails to further immerse you. But do they need to? Do you want them to? Could they not? If dreams can't come true, then why not pretend? Adhere to the entity's rules, and you'll follow the path provided to you. Reach what everyone who's followed this story before knows is at the end, and, well, I suppose you'll see soon enough. Or you find a way to change the rules, work outside the box, derail the track, rig the game, corrupt the file. everyone knows the house always wins, so become the very house to deal the cards and roll the dice. Or maybe you can't. Maybe you can but won't. Either way, just try to remember that you are more than what this story molds of you. More than a lesson in irony. I suppose that goes for all of us, really. I don't know. We're in the unknown. Maybe there's something to that idea. Maybe I'm simply deluding myself on hope. I suppose I'm a bit of an optimist. Makes sense for a swallowtail, I guess. Nonetheless, there are tales to be told here, regardless if there's a happy ending when all this is finished or not. Well, enjoy this tasty butterfly food of a statement. My treat. I do hope it was sweet as nectar, and not sour or salty like blood. I truly wish you good luck. Statement ends.
I'm a bug. Oh, I'm so very small. Little bug. Taking so long to crawl to where I'm going. Where am I going? In your home. Oh, it's so very warm. All alone. So I'll go get my swarm and we'll get